So yeah, hello everybody. Thank you for joining us today. My name is Nawal Houghton. It's spelt very differently, and that's always like a conversation opener. But yeah, it's said Noel, just like Christmas. Nawal Houghton, and I'm a divorce coach. I am your divorce coach. That's what I'm known as. I'm also a solicitor and an accredited mediator, and I bring these skills to the role as your divorce coach. I've realised that the world doesn't need another divorce lawyer or family lawyer, and especially in the realm of sort of narcissism. What we really need is someone that's got an excellent understanding, practical, real experience of what it's like to divorce a narcissist. You can work with me one-on-one. I offer sort of one-on-one service, or you can have an SOS session. I'm very busy on social media. On my Instagram, I post daily content to help you navigate your divorce or separation process. And that is exactly what I do as a divorce coach. I sort of provide practical, logical, strategic, and emotional support when you're going through a divorce or separation. You don't have to have been married. You can also not have been married and had children, or not children with, with the narcissist to sort of work with me. But yeah, that is sort of my area of expertise. I also have a very keen interest in helping children that have a narcissistic parent. It's wonderful if I can help my clients navigate or manage a narcissist, but I won't really have changed the world, I guess, or made it a better place if the children that are still exposed to that parent then go on to either become narcissistic, wherever that may fall on a spectrum, or that they enter into a narcissistic relationship, because then obviously the trauma repeats itself. So I work a lot with my clients on empowering our children. As much as we want to go and save them, we have to empower them so that they get to understand the limitations of that particular parent. So tonight I'll be answering sort of all your questions. I'm looking forward to that. Though I am a solicitor, any sort of answers that I give tonight are not considered legal advice. As I said, otherwise I'd just be a family lawyer, but I'll always tell you to go and double check with your lawyer. But yeah, there's a kind of deemed recommendations. But yeah, I'm looking forward to answering those tonight.
Amazing. Thank you so much. I couldn't find my unmute button. So what do you want, first of all then, if we go through some of the questions that have already been asked on the app, and then we can kind of open it up to any more questions or thoughts that you guys have tonight.
Great.
So the first question we've had is, can I apply for a divorce if my now ex-wife has applied 3 years ago but is now sitting on it and I don't know why? It feels like it's something that she can control over me.
Yeah, so this is all around the acknowledgement of service. Sometimes when these questions come through, because I haven't got sort of all the finer detail, I have to give a high level review answer, but I'll answer it as best as possible. So if your wife divorced you, you should have filled in what is called an acknowledgement of service, which is just saying, yes, I acknowledge that I have received this divorce. So if you have done that, then it should have followed through. Now, you might be saying, yeah, I've done that, but nothing's happened since. Okay, in which case you can actually, after a period of 3 months, if you are the respondent, can apply for your decree absolute. Or if you feel that there are still some things outstanding, like children or finances, you can apply to the court. So I often try and describe sort of the divorce process in this way. Applying for a divorce is sort of the top umbrella bit over here, the overarching bit, and that's where you get your decree nisi, which is the halfway point. That's the court saying, yes, we've received your application, understood, fantastic. And then after that, at the end, you get the decree absolute. But under that, there's sort of two channels or routes. One is children and one is finances. Now, ideally, you wouldn't need to go down the court route at all, and you either go to mediation or you sort it out with your solicitors, or even without and do it on your own, great. But if you are stuck and your wife is not responding or not doing anything about it, you are free to instigate through children, which is a C100 form, or finances, which is a Form A. So you don't have to wait, you can actually push through yourself. But yes, that would be sort of my general high level answer on that. You can do something yourself. You don't have to sort of be, I don't know, I guess you probably feel like a sitting duck really, but they don't have that hold over you, can push through.
Oh, thank you so much.
Okay.
The next one kind of ties in a little bit with it. So it says, my estranged husband has binned all 3 divorce papers sent out to him by my solicitor. He's claiming he hasn't received them. He's now saying there are money issues and making other excuses to say why he hasn't signed the papers, although he's moved on with his life and has a partner and a child. How do I get the ball rolling properly if he's continuing to say that he's not getting anything and not doing anything?
Okay, so there's a slightly bit of conflicting information in that message, in that if he has admitted somewhere in writing on paper that actually he's not signing until, if you're able to glean from that he's actually said, yeah, I'm not going to sign these divorce papers that you've sent me until, that is wonderful, because that is proof that oh, sorry, I've just looked at someone raising their hand. That is proof that actually they have received it. So what you can do to the court is contact the court and actually ask for a deemed service. So you can say to the court, hi, I know they haven't sent anything back, but actually they have received it. So can I have deemed service? Another way to do it, and if you don't get deemed service and the court says, no, that proof that you sent me isn't enough, you can serve it through a process server. So that's actually someone physically serving them, you know, like in the American movies, I don't know if they've ever seen it, when they go, you've been served. It's a little bit like that. So that's actually using a process server. There's also alternative service, so that's a bit like, you don't know where their residential address is, but you know they're living with a cousin, or they know sort of they have daily contact with a I don't know, grandmother or something. That, you know, also you can do alternative service, but again, you need to get the court to accept that. And then another one is dispense service, where the court says, oh, don't worry, we don't need you to, but actually it's very, very, very rare. And when you think about sort of the grounds for divorce, I know everyone sort of thinks there's 5, actually there's only 1. It's saying that your marriage has irretrievably broken down, and then you've got to, those 5 choices that you get, it's just a box that you tick. So they are, more often than not, people sort of go for unreasonable behaviour. And the great thing about going with unreasonable behaviour is that's one of the grounds that you can actually try and do this deemed service. 2 years consent is sometimes used, but if you're dealing with someone difficult, it's a bit like a narcissist, they're not going to give you consent. You can try and do 5 years, but that's 5 years, and that's, you don't want to be in that situation either. And adultery is really hard, because you have to actually give evidence for adultery unless they've kind of confessed. So, which is why the new Divorce Act that's going to come in hopefully in the autumn will be amazing, because you then go for no fault divorce, and then either one or both people can actually apply for divorce on no fault without having to, you know, do this, I'm really sorry, we have to do unreasonable behaviour, or kind of going through the ability for someone to say, no, I disagree with all your allegations, etc. Just makes the process so much more difficult. But this hopefully in the autumn will come through. So yes, that was, I hope that was a useful answer. I don't know whether you wanted to see why that maybe that person, that was their question if they raised their hand, but no, it's not that, is it?
No, I think it was the lady down there who's waving at us.
Oh god, yes.
And then I had a question dropped in the comment box that's kind of related. So are there any distinct differences for Scotland compared with the rest of the UK in terms of divorce, or is the UK all the same?
No, I think there can be some instances that are different. So I would always ask to go and kind of seek a specific divorce lawyer, because yeah, there are some differences there, a bit like Ireland also. So I would go for that, yeah.
Okay, brilliant. Then another one that again is kind of around professional services and kind of a bit more kind of on the legal side of things, I guess. So someone has asked any advice for dealing with professional services and going forward, identifying as and when children might be at risk from narcissistic behaviour, how to deal with parental alienation, and how to deal with any potential problems.
Okay, so again, this is sort of something that falls very close to my heart, because yeah, in the children it is so difficult. I suppose before I answer this, it might be helpful if I give some people sort of an overriding kind of, I don't know, idea a bit more about what narcissism is, and, you know, kind of highlights. And I'm sure if you've come here, you kind of have got quite a good idea, but it's always good to sort of recap. So generally speaking, I think the view is generally it's not that you are narcissistic or not. There's actually a bit of a spectrum. And actually, though this might scare you slightly, we're all slightly narcissistic in that, you know, we kind of get our hair done or like nice clothes or, you know, kind of, I don't know, take selfies or whatever. But, you know, that sort of, or we take care of ourselves, that is kind of deemed healthy narcissism because it doesn't really affect anybody. You're not sort of impacting anybody to that degree. And narcissists generally do fall somewhere on that sort of spectrum. It's incredibly hard to get a narcissist sort of diagnosed with official narcissistic personality disorder, NPD, because they don't hold their hand up and go, yeah, I'm a narcissist. And also they're highly manipulative. So it's very likely that they can manipulate the therapist that is analysing them. So it's kind of figuring out where on the spectrum you believe that narcissist sort of falls on. So generally, narcissism is, you know, what are the things that I'm looking for is often what is asked. So you're looking for sort of grandiose sense of self, you know, often lives in a bit of a fantasy world, you know, sometimes might say things like, oh, I'm actually really special. No one really knows this about me, but I've got like this really amazing thing and you're so lucky to be with me. A huge sense of entitlement and this endless need for constant attention, admiration, and if that attention isn't given, then you're sort of punished or penalized. They don't believe in boundaries at all. They never take any responsibility for their actions. They're not able to self-reflect. Any criticism by you of them they see as personal damage and they rage often. There are sort of different types of narcissists. I work with my clients to profile them. And the reason profiling is really important is, again, it's getting an idea of where they are on that spectrum. So you can get the classic narcissist, as often we might hear about, you know, the, oh, I'm amazing, I'm wonderful, look to the way, and they like fast cars and rich things. That's sort of called grandiose. When they're highly abusive with that, they're often called malignant narcissists. They're very overt, those two categories that I've described. Then you sort of come along to the more covert narcissists. They're very covert in their abuse as well, very underhand, lots of gaslighting. What's gaslighting? Making you second guess yourself, telling you that something happened when it didn't, or that you didn't say something when you sort of quite sure that you did. It's called covert because it's so underhand. And often a lot of my clients say that you know you've got someone covert because when you try and explain the type of things or the type of abuse that person's giving you, you almost sound like a crazy person, and you're sort of people that you try and explain go, no, I don't really understand. What do you mean by that? So that often is a real indicator of sort of covert abuse. Another type of narcissist is called the community narc. So that is someone that's in public, wonderful and charitable, and often sometimes can be in public eye or things like that, and actually at home are incredibly abusive. And so coming back to that question about, you know, what can I do when I've got a child that actually has a narcissistic parent? The thing to identify there is it kind of depends on the age of the child, number one. Number two, it's all about empowering that child. Again, it's very difficult, you know, if we're talking about small children, unless you can actually demonstrate some actual proof and it become then a safeguarding issue, then you've got some sort of power there. If they're sort of slightly older, I would always recommend counselling. And the reason I do that is because the child needs an outward sort of third party in order for them to express how they feel, because it's quite scary for a child to identify that there are some limitations with this one parent, because children are born adoring both their parents. They need to love both their mother and their father, narcissistic or not. They need that. But what you need for them to understand is that they are worthy and that they are whole, irrespective of the fact that this parent may not be able to meet their emotional needs, which is the key factor with a narcissistic parent. They are not able to meet that child's emotional needs. A narcissist will often play, if you've got two children, something like they call the scapegoat and golden child. And what that is they often treat one child like they're like God, you know, give them everything, all the treats, take them on holiday, spoil them. And then there'll be the scapegoat, which is the one that gets blamed for everything, given very little attention. And that's done for multiple reasons, actually. Number one, to create tension between both children, so that you've got the golden child that thinks, I've got to pay the narcissist parents so much attention because otherwise they won't give me that, you know, they won't sort of take care of me, or they won't give me all the goodies that they do. Then you've got the scapegoat feeling unworthy, thinking, I've got to give you loads of attention because otherwise you won't sort of care for me. So how do I deal with that? It's all about empowering. There's lots of techniques. It's about modeling good behavior. Number one, always be the parent that models the right behavior. I have a phrase that I get my clients to use if the child comes to you, he or she, and says, you know, mummy and daddy did this and I don't understand, or mummy and daddy weren't very nice, or mummy and daddy lied, rather than denigrating that parent, which isn't the right behavior. It's a sentence to use is, well, you see, mummy and daddy's brain just thinks differently. Okay, it just works differently. What I would do is I don't lie, or we don't lie in this family because it's not the right thing to do, but mummy and daddy do because you know, they just think a little bit differently, but let's do it this way. So again, it's not denigrating them, it's just sort of a midway point of explaining that there are limitations. And when they can go to a counsellor, they can sort of dive into that a little bit deeper, and they can express themselves, because they often feel that if they tell one parent against the other, they feel guilty. So empowering that way, you're wanting to help them help themselves. As much as parents, we want to go in and rescue, that's not going to help them in the long term. It really is about giving them the tools for them to decipher this on their own, so that at some stage they understand and they can say, I love my parent, but my parent has limitations. I hope that was a full enough answer.
Yeah, no, that's brilliant advice. Thank you. So the next one then is, I have a 9-month-old with a narcissist. I didn't think he was at the time, and slowly he's taken my strength, confidence, and self-worth away from me. All the advice I see online is if you meet a narcissist, run for the hills, but I can't because I have a daughter with him. I will never be the parent that stops a father seeing his child, but I need some advice on how to handle him and these traits. I've tried every way I can, but most of the time it puts myself in a position where it knocks me for days. Any tips on coping with the other parent would be great.
Yeah, oh, it's really hard. And what I'm hearing there is a description of, it's kind of a triggering. You're being triggered by this person, and it's sort of affecting your whole being. And, you know, a lot of my clients are like that. I have a lot of clients that come to me, just getting an email or a text message is ever so frightening. And what it does is the experiences that person is describing there are triggers. You're getting a trigger from a trauma. I use language where I don't believe we should say I am a victim of narcissistic abuse. We are victimized, and what you are experiencing is the trauma of narcissistic abuse. And what is happening, I think, for this person is, yes, they're being triggered in all manner of ways. You know, some narcissistic sufferers, or people that have been victimized by narcissistic abuse, you know, experience PTSD. And that can even translate into the children. So sometimes if you have children that sort of does something inadvertently without realizing, that reminds you of the narcissistic parent, you kind of go off, you know, you lose it, and you're not even understanding why. And that's because you are being triggered. So for this person, it's all about managing the narcissist, I believe. And I feel that there's still a sense of massive fear that this person still controls you. And one of the main things that I tell my clients is, they really actually don't have that power. It's actually, whether you realize it or not, you giving them that power. And when you realize that actually deep within, a narcissist just is someone that has very, very low self-esteem, hence the need for constant supply, low self-confidence. You are probably, as much as scared as you are, probably more confident than they are. And when you realize that this is just a game that they're playing, and that, by the way, the game is quite repetitive, they're incredibly predictable, which is why I help my clients profile the narcissist, in that once you understand the type of narcissist that they are, you get to identify more or less the types of tricks or techniques that they play generally, but also in divorce. And all of that general understanding, and understanding that they don't really have your power, and they're not as strong as you think you are, and also teaching mechanisms to help you when you're triggered, sort of lifts you up, and you gain that confidence where you understand that actually I can overcome the way that I feel. some of the techniques that I sort of advise my clients to deal with any sort of, you know, as this person described, feeling triggered and I feel affected and it ruins my whole day. There's actually on my Instagram, my Instagram is at @your_divorce_coach. Maybe you could put those details at the end for everybody so they can see it. But I did a brilliant interview, sort of a live with someone where we talked about the different types of techniques that you can use when you are triggered in this very event. And one of my favorite, I mean, there's loads of ones. There's kind of like breathing, or there's, because what we're trying to do is rewire your brain to understand that this is just a trauma, you know, it's repeating the same thing and we just need to just rewire it slightly. But one of the ones that I personally like is just tracing sort of, you know, around your fingers, and what you're trying to do is just kind of calm yourself down. Essentially, when you are affected by trauma, there are sort of 4 typical things that you'll do. You'll run away, or you'll fight. So that's the natural you know, fight responses that we have. Or you'll freeze, which is the, oh my God, I can't do anything, I'm just in this trauma situation. Or lastly, and one that perhaps not many people know about, is called fawn. And that just means you basically comply. Yeah, you comply with whatever they need or do because you're just so frightened by this experience. But it would, I think in this instance, counselling, understanding that you're having a trauma reaction, you are being triggered. Yes, it's really difficult. I mean, technically speaking, the advice around narcissism is no contact or grey rock. Okay, well, that doesn't work if you've got children, does it? So what's your advice for me there? I say low contact and learn to manage the narcissist. I help my clients manage your communication, email, text, you know, protect, build up boundaries. And I'm not just talking emotional ones, I mean physical ones as well, all types, you know, helping you get your consent order if necessary. Even after divorce, you might have that bit of paper where you go, yay, I've got my consent order, children, money, done. Never going to touch me again. Not true. They will always consider you a form of supply, especially if you have the children. So if you learn how to manage them, if you really understand and get how they work, that's your real safety, not that bit of paper. Yeah, great, you know, legally you've got that bit of paper, but you're just back into the legal system. And by the way, narcissists loves that. They love nothing more than, you know, litigation fatigue, which is dragging you all the way back again for whatever reason. So it's all of those factors brought together. So dealing with the triggers, learning how to manage them on a long-term basis, including their correspondence, and then empowering your children, I think would help this person generally. And counselling is really, really big, just helping you process the trauma experience that you had. I hope that was useful to whoever asked that question.
Brilliant. I'll go now if you're happy. There's a few that have pinged in privately to me on the group, so I'll kind of dart between the two.
Go for it.
There's one that's come in. It says, I'm really worried about the emotional abuse I believe my 2 daughters are being subjected to by a narcissistic father. I want them to receive counselling, but my ex is refuting and refusing. Surely I can still arrange counselling for them. Why does he get to dictate? Do I need his consent?
What ages are the children, girls?
It doesn't say, so I don't know if the person who asked it, if you're happy to drop that in the comments.
Yeah, I'll wait a couple of minutes to see if they can give the.
Oh, yeah, she said they're 4 and 10.
Oh, okay, so one really young and one sort of on the cusp. It's not, so the first thing about girls, so their father is actually their first love relationship, in the same way that boys, their first relationship is their mother. So fundamentally speaking, in sort of the world of psychology, one would argue that those girls are going to form all their future male relationships on this sort of father, which is why it's really important to, you know, act upon the fact that you realise that their father has not, you know, narcissistic traits, wherever those appear on the spectrum, and that you're doing something about it. That in itself is brilliant, fantastic. You're well on your way to helping the girls. 4's difficult, it's quite young, and 10, you know, is also right in the cusp of the middle age. But whilst you want to do counselling, if they're really blocking, unless they kind of get an order, like a specific issues order that says that you can't, I would sometimes incline to say go ahead for it, but I would go school route. and it's called pastoral care. And that's often the best way, because otherwise, when he's trying to block that, he looks a bit odd, doesn't he? Not wanting to sort of, you know, and I suppose the way to do it is not to walk into school and go, right, narcissistic father, I need you to help me. Because actually, believe it or not, making those claims without any fundamental proof, you could potentially be accused of parental alienation. Over in the US, any claims without fact that the other parent is narcissistic is deemed parental alienation. So you have to tread carefully. What I would recommend is going to school saying that you've noticed sort of odd behaviour, or you're quite concerned about the girl's sort of self-esteem. Again, this requires sort of more talking with that person to get some real more information from it. But I would recommend going through the pastoral route and just explaining, I suppose, about their father, that you know, you come from a divorced or a separated family, that you sort of have heard some odd things from the girls and you're a bit worried about them. You know, are there sort of, is there anxieties, their self-esteem issues, you know, what else is there that you may be able to go down that route for them? And then it kind of goes from there. You could then perhaps develop it into, because then you've got, if the school sort of say, oh no, they need more than just 6 or 7 weeks, you then have that route potentially to go down that private counselling, which may help you. And then you sort of, you know, go down that way, which is a path that's a lot easier than saying, by the way, they need counselling, is that okay, etc. I hope that answered that question.
Yeah, thank you. She says thank you, that's really helpful.
Oh, you're very, very welcome.
Then I've got another question that was asked on the app. So my alcoholic and previously abusive ex has recently been lying about how much he's drinking when he's with our son. He started hiding alcohol in juice when he's with him. I have an amicable relationship with him, as I think it's good for our son to not have any more conflict, and I can't face any further abuse from him. But I've even tested the remains of juice for alcohol and the results were positive. I've confronted him and he's lied about it, and I'm worried how to deal with this in the future as he's lying. I know he'll be unreasonable if I stop access to our son, so I don't want to go down that route.
Okay, so if you are actually aware that your child is potentially at risk, that is a safeguarding issue. And I suppose my question to you is, sorry, how old's the child? I've got an age.
It doesn't say.
Okay. So what if something were to happen at school, or something were to happen to him, and you knew that actually that child was with a parent that was at risk? And essentially leaving a child with someone that you know is under the influence and not able to take care, whether it be drugs or alcohol, is a risk. So it's a safeguarding issue. And I hear you when you say, I'm really scared because I'm trying to be nice. I'm trying to get into a really nice co-parenting relationship with his dad. And if I pinpoint about his behavior, he's going to kick off. If you hear that, and now that I've repeated that to you, that's abuse. That's you being in a situation where you cannot freely say to somebody, you're not being safe with our child. It's not a safe environment for our child. So I suppose, without sort of going into too much depth here, you need to identify that putting your son, to the child, in that environment is not right for them, and you need to kind of act for the best interest of your child. And being scared of how he's going to kick off, this person, if they are narcissistic, are going to kick off on everything. And you need to think about the child and what's in their best interests, and your role is to safeguard that child.
She has just said that the child is 6.
Yeah, so is that he? Yeah, he. Sorry, mother of boys, I automatically say he all the time. Yeah, you've got to think about the safety of your son. Yeah, and if it's not safe, if you're smelling alcohol, and I'm not saying that you should stop contact, but I would start with, look, it's not safe, you can't be drinking like this. I need you to do a test every time. And if they're resistant to that, alcoholics are alcoholics, and they're not going to stop because you've made some sort of threat. So you have to consider whether your child is in a safe environment and take the necessary steps, even if that means he will kick off. Kicking off is not a reason to put your child in a situation that you feel isn't safe.
No, that's great advice. Thank you. The next one I have then is again from the app. So it says, I have been separated for nearly 3 years. My ex is trying to alienate the children from me, not succeeding, but it is a stressful situation and they are becoming a little suspicious with me sometimes. Our financial situation is still not fully resolved. He is a lawyer and is dragging the process. How can I close this conflicting situation and help the children?
Do we have ages at all?
No.
Okay,
I haven't got any ages.
Okay, so again, this is going to be a bit like my previous answer in that the reason you might be getting parental alienation, and this is where the work of a divorce coach like me is really important, because I get a brilliant overview. You've told me something really important in that finances aren't sorted. So often when there's a bit of noise going on here around finances, so you might be sort of on a, dare I say it, winning streak, or you're asking uncomfortable questions, like you're looking for full discovery being all the documents. The narcissist doesn't really like that if they're hiding something. So what they might do is when that's getting uncomfortable over here, they'll make some noise somewhere else, and that's the children. They really only weaponize 2 things, and that's money and children. So you often find if something's going on and very noisy over here, they'll revert somewhere else. So what is happening in that instance is they're using the children, parental alienation. I would, again, depending on the ages of the children, are you able to talk to them? Or I talk a lot about transition. So when the children come back from the other parent, don't go deep into questions. We all do it. I do it. In fact, my children go, Mummy, don't you tell people not to ask people too many questions when they come back? So we all do it slightly. And I have to remind myself, going, oh yes, that's true. Give them some time, but I'm wondering if there's an opportunity to sort of inquire a bit more about what's going on in terms of, them feeling a bit uneasy about you. They always need a good, I always say, like a good 24 hours, perhaps even sometimes 2 days, to kind of resettle in, really think about what it's like for them to have to move from one household to the other. And if you're being told a certain number of things, you come back. But when you feel they've readjusted, maybe have very leisurely conversations to them about, how are you? Are you okay? You seemed a bit sort of uneasy when you came back, or is it just that you find it difficult when you come back from daddy? And see what more information is coming. If you're adamant that's parental alienation, I would definitely again go down the you need sort of evidence of it. You might find difficult getting evidence from the children because they don't want to offset one parent against the other, but you might want to consider counselling, because again, it's another person that is not associated with either of you that they will hopefully speak to, and then you can do it that way. Try not to overly defend your position. I even, so many years later, get my sons coming back going, Daddy says that you're this and that you've done that. And there's naturally within us this, oh, defend. Don't do that. Just go, okay, fine. I'm not going to talk about that now. Why don't you go away and do something, then we'll talk about it later. It's very instinctive for us to defend, but likewise and that, by the way, that non-defending technique applies not only to our children, but also any friends and family that kind of, they're called flying monkeys. Is they carry the message of the narcissist about, how you're bad, or you've done this, or you've done A, B, or C. They're called flying monkeys. They speak on behalf of the narcissist. So you might encounter loads of those. Don't overly defend. A very good answer to that is, well, you're entitled to your perception, but I don't agree with it. Is also a good handy answer to give to them. So yes, I think sort of the general answer about that is try talking to them depending on their ages, and maybe inquire, going down sort of the counselling route also. I hope that was useful also.
Thank you. So I've got one here that's come in on the comments from a dad. It's a question around safeguarding my son from my ex. Does she have any rights to see him without my knowledge? The nature at the end of our relationship was very traumatic, and my ex was exposed as being abusive towards our son. Our son no longer wants to see her and has started resenting her. And then he said that his son is 14.
Okay. So he was saying that does he have to make the son go to see his mum? Is that the question?
Yeah, does she have any rights to see him without my knowledge, or if the child doesn't want to?
I suppose I'm just wondering if he's not going to see her at all at the moment, that there doesn't seem to be any child arrangements in order. She can apply for a C100 if she doesn't have any access, but I presume that you'd bring up any safeguarding issues about that, about the potential abuse. So I think this is more of a case of, you're saying no contact because you were abusive, and if you want contact, then you need to apply to the court for that, because I have some real issues about you being in contact with that child. I think that's the way round that it should go, rather than, do I need to know about, I mean, how is the non-known contact happening? Is she going to a school, or how is that? it's one of those questions where I need a bit more info, but sort of high level, what we're talking about is if you fundamentally believe that there is a safeguarding issue about this parent seeing this child, then I suppose your action you're telling me is I'm not allowing contact. It would be for that parent to go to the courts to seek access, and you're saying, well, actually, no, there's been abuse, there needs to be fact-finding, CAFCAS, etc.
Mm-hmm. Perfect. He just said she has no contact as the police were involved, but has been to the school to try and see him.
Yeah, so I would contact the school, explain that obviously there are potential safeguarding issues here, there is no contact, you are to be notified. I mean, she has parental responsibility, whether you like that or not, but obviously, you know, you also, by the way, can apply for a C100 and say that you want to ensure that no contact is to occur without your consent, because you know that there's safeguarding issues. It's not just about, often people think that it's only the parent that doesn't see the child that can make the C100 consent. No, you also can say, actually, I've got grave concerns about what they're trying to do, and I want to make, because there is a safeguarding issue, I want to do it like this. Also, the other thing is, practically speaking, he's 14, he or she is 14, they're going to vote with their feet. Okay, so there comes an age where you can force them to go, they will kick and scream and they just will not go. So you're kind of already at that cusp, you know, teenagers will, but yeah.
Perfect, thank you. I've had then another message come in from someone on the call. So it says, we are involved with child services initially due to his abuse, which I think is the other parent, but quickly changed to focusing on my mental health without acknowledging that his abuse is the cause of my poor mental health. Our child protection meetings are virtual and my ex is on there too. I am asked regularly to provide proof of the abuse and examples. I do not have proof and I do not want to share my experiences in front of him as he denies everything. Can they make me, and can they refuse a request for separate meetings?
Okay, thank you. So there's lots going on there. Number one, just to give you some explanation, what he's doing is called projection, where they actually reverse role, and it's a bit like when someone's having an affair and they accuse you of committing adultery, so they project, they just kind of reverse role it there. And in terms of that kind of, I don't know, again, the sort of personal circumstances in depth, but you are entitled to ask for some sort of protection or screen. Like if you were physically there, you'd have some protection or screen, or you need to inquire about whether you can do it written or not, but they should be able to provide you some additional protection. You need to talk to the service about that. Also contact all your sort of domestic abuse helplines, etc., who will give you some added advice about the scenarios. Also, don't feel that you need to expose yourself to something that is highly traumatic for you. So do seek all of those helplines and get some proper advice about what you can and cannot do. That's what I would recommend there.
Perfect, thank you. I've then got one back on the app. So someone has said, I left my ex 18 months ago. He wants custody over my eldest, who is 9, but is denying my youngest, who is 1. I left when he attacked me again while I was 4 months pregnant. He has previous under a real name that I never knew, and I have since found out he has children from a previous relationship that I didn't know about. What are the chances of him getting custody for the older child? We've completely got no contact, but now he is saying that I'm doing parental alienation.
Okay. One of my favorite things I like to tell clients is just because they say something doesn't mean it's true. So always remember that. We often get very like, oh my God, they've said it. It's like, it doesn't matter. Just because they say it doesn't mean it's the truth. They do a lot of bluffing there. Also in your personal situation, can you see the scapegoat and golden child? Yes, one child I want to see, the other one that I don't. That's a classic narcissism trait. In terms, again, without knowing the intricate details and a bit more about what's been going on, if they're going to make a C100 application, which is saying that they now want to see the child, your response, I presume, is going to be, well, no, there are some safeguarding issues, there's abuse that's happened and put in place, and it would be for you to kind of promote that in your application. So in terms of asking me, you know, what's the likelihood of, what are their chances, it kind of really depends. I don't think it would be right for me to say that you know, a potentially abusive parent that has been abusive in the past never gets to see their child. The court fundamentally does want the child to see both parents, apart from if there's safeguarding issues. And if those safeguarding issues have passed, like for instance, let's say you were an alcoholic and you got into some trouble, but actually now you are a recovered alcoholic. You might actually work in the alcoholic field to help further addicts. Just because of that previous experience that you've had, that doesn't mean you can then never see your child. It's all about whether the abuse is ongoing. There might have to be child visitation in a contact centre. There's lots of things there, but it would be for them to apply. If you're maintaining no contact, I presume they would then automatically apply for C100, and you would be saying, actually, no, contact needs to be supervised, or I don't want any contact, or I want it to be minimal, or it could be staggered. He needs to prove himself. All sorts of different scenarios that you can put in place because you believe that there is fundamentally a safeguarding issue. Also, him saying that he only wants to see one as opposed to the other isn't great for him in terms of him wanting just access with one child. The court would not look favourably upon him for that. So that's something to use. That's a good point of leverage for you.
The person who posted that on the app has then just dropped a comment in saying that he has made the C100. I've put everything in, and including that my 9-year-old doesn't want to see him. And my 9-year-old is showing signs of PTSD, as there was some abuse towards him as well as the mum.
As much evidence as you can get for your C100 is what I would propose. I also would think about maybe sort of long term, what is it that you would need to see from that person in order, if the court were to propose potentially, maybe contact, what is it that you need to see? Are you saying that actually it would need to be a very long period of time in a safe environment where you know that your children are safe to see him, like a contact centre, and that actually it would be for him to prove himself? You may want to perhaps suggest something like that, which might see you as a very progressive sort of person thinking long term. But as much evidence about your child suffering from PTSD also, because what I always say is make it easy for the courts. Help them help you. So as much evidence that you can get together, saying that your child has displayed some symptoms of PTSD, they'll find that quite difficult. They'll want to see something that perhaps is concrete. So is school able to give you something? Is there some behavioural sort of attitudes anywhere else that spike that might indicate that? Can you get them to see a counsellor in the time? I don't know when your hearing is. Just some kind of helpful bits there.
Perfect, thank you. Then I've got a message from someone who says, will the narcissist ever leave you alone? Can you share a good outcome and the best scenario one could wish for, as it's never going to be all rosy? So I think maybe this person just needs kind of, or would like a little bit of positivity, or kind of a little bit of
I suppose, look, we all have those kind of moments where we think, oh my God, they're never going to leave me alone, they're going to go after me forever. But actually, you're not going to have that thought if you realise that, again, they can't take their power, it's you giving it to them. And when you really, really learn that, I mean, look, so it's for all intents and purposes, they're always going to be in your life in a way if you've got children with them, because they're the mother or father of your child, and nothing's going to change that. So actually accepting that is kind of part of your recovery in a way, really accepting that they're there, but actually it's okay if they're there because I've learned how to manage them. And it comes to a point also, by the way, when your children are older, 18, you do not have to contact that other parent again. There's just no need to. So you can actually go no contact at some point. Yes, if you want a good story, mine's a good story. I was physically, mentally, emotionally abused. I still have to parallel parent, but do I get that scary feeling anymore when I see? No. Do I allow them to affect me anymore? No. Did it take some time? Yes. Is it possible? Yes. I did 5 years of counselling. I had to understand the role that I played in that sort of relationship, because I've got a really good blog on my website. My website is, again, I think the details, the links hopefully will be left at the end, is yourdivorcecoach.org.uk. And there's a blog there called The Narcissist and the Codependent. And this, more often than not, narcissists head towards people pleasers, very empathetic individuals, and codependents that probably have abandonment issues. And the reason we call it a perfect dance. And the reason it's a perfect dance is because the codependent gives, because they're giving, because they're saying, love me, want me, validate me, make me think that I'm worthy. And then the narcissist goes, give, because they just need all this attention. So they kind of dance perfectly kind of together. So the reason there is an outcome and there is a, They don't need to leave you alone, I guess, in that way. And that's not what you're searching for. You're searching for your own recovery. And when you understand the role that you played in that, not only does it help you in your future relationships, but it helps you identify why you were with that particular person, and that that person doesn't have that power anymore. And that is your freedom. Not that they leave you alone, but that you have managed to manage them, and that you can continue to lead your life, whether they're there or not. I hope that was useful.
Yes, definitely. Thank you. I'm just trying to go through the chat to make sure I've not missed any links. There's quite a lot.
Yeah.
One that then says, my husband left last year, but now out of spite wants me and the kids suddenly out of the house that we co-own so he can live there by himself. If we won't leave, he says he will push to sell the house externally. Is there any advice or anything that you would advise this person to do in this situation?
Do they both own the house?
It says they co-own it.
Okay, so no, can't chuck you out. You'd have to, they'd have to get a non-occupation order, and that's quite hard to get. And a non-occupation order means that you can kick out. They can't do that. Also, in terms of threatening to sell, can't sell it without you signing a piece of paper also. So double check that if you are definitely sure that you co-own and that you're on the title deeds. And there's a really easy way of doing that. You go on to the land registry, you type in your address, and then for £3 you can get the title deeds, which sets out who the owners are and if there are any legal charges, which is just a very legal word for a mortgage. And if your name is on there, then you can't sell it without your knowledge. So those are all just bluffing. It's not very nice when you're divorcing someone in, especially if they're narcissistic and you're living with them, but a lot of my clients go through it. And again, that's why they use a divorce coach, just to support them through it. But so, yeah, I hope that answered that question.
Yes, definitely. And then one person's just said to me, and I'm not sure what it's in relation to, it says, when we talk about proof, what constitutes as proof? I don't know whether you can...
what was this about, the proof for...
I'm not quite sure what question it's relating to, so I don't know if the person that's just messaged me can add a bit more.
Yeah, is this about parental alienation maybe? I don't know.
I think I'm trying to, sorry, there's so like many messages.
I know. When I do my lives, you get the questions one after the other, and I'm trying to catch them up again. No problem.
Proof of abuse. So when we're talking about proof of kind of abuse, I guess towards the other parent or towards children, what constitutes proof?
Calling police, witness statements from other people, that kind of thing, actually sort of tangible stuff that can help you.
And then how do I cope? Do I cope with the harassment and his games when he seems to get away with it time and time again and he's unaffected?
Again, it's all about learning to manage. So you feel like he's getting away with it because you feel that he sort of won something there. And by the way, narcissists love to win. It's again about shifting your thought process. And if I can break it down for you and show you that you've actually got choices and options, you won't see it as him winning anymore. And you may actually, when we work together, for instance, discover that you don't have boundaries and that's why they're winning, or you're giving something away when you don't realize that you're giving something, which is why you think that they're winning. And it's very interesting, actually, that point about, I always feel like they're getting away with it and they're going to be happy and rosy. I answered a bit of a similar question on my Instagram stories today. People sometimes, or was it yesterday? I think it's yesterday, when people say, oh God, that narcissist seems so much happier with that new person. God, was it me? Was I the issue? And I sort of spoke about, which answers this question as well a little bit, and they actually aren't winning, or they aren't going to treat someone else any better. Fundamentally, they're actually deeply unhappy people. Like I said, really low self-esteem, and really insecure. They play all of these games to make themselves feel better. And at the end of their days, they're incredibly lonely. They probably have no friends, no real family. They've alienated quite a lot of people. So that notion of they're always winning actually isn't true. It's just your perception of what's going on at that particular time. And it's probably really interesting for you to work with someone to kind of look at how you're managing that person.
Brilliant. And then someone's just kind of added on to the kind of proof of abuse question is around, so the abuse I am receiving kills people. The police are involved, but he gets away with it every time. He's very calculated and nothing he is doing is illegal. So I guess they're finding it difficult with proof and kind of
I would
Yeah,
contact domestic abuse helplines and just get a bit more advice. I probably need to talk to this person one-on-one because it's just a bit. But if you've got police reports, or if they're doing something very underhand, and it is very hard sometimes when they're doing, one of the most difficult things is kind of proving this mental abuse. How do you prove to someone that they're gaslighting you? It's really difficult. But if you contact the domestic abuse helplines, they'll be able to help you with that and just guide you in that. It's probably the best answer to give on this.
Brilliant, thank you. I think then that is all the questions that I have on here and on the app, unless anyone has anything they just want to drop in. I've just popped, it's a couple of messages back, I've popped Nawal's Instagram handle and her name, so you can search those if you want to follow her, because there's a lot of content, a lot of questions like similar to this that might be really helpful to a lot of you.
Yeah, you can. So I've got, actually, not only can you follow me on Instagram, which is at @your_divorce_coach, where, yes, as you said, loads of stories every day. There's lots of highlights as well about lots of different topics. As I said before at the beginning, you can work one-on-one with me, or even just have an SOS session. If I also give a free 15-minute discovery call if you wanted to see how we can work together. But aside from that, I also have 2 free private Facebook narcissistic survivors groups. One is male and one is female. Though narcissists, tend to have sort of the same traits, the way that they act, female and male, are somewhat different. And actually, I find my clients feel a lot safer being able to talk in a female only or a male only group. And the links to those are on Facebook. If you type in Your Divorce Coach, you should be able to find those as well, but I can send the links out as well. I think I sent them to you before, didn't I? Yeah, there should be, yeah. So that's another way of kind of getting, it's all about sense of community. And if there's one thing that perhaps, I don't know, you felt from this evening, everybody, is that sense of that you're not alone. And there are other people experiencing the same thing. Those Facebook groups that I have, very active. The male one is sort of developing, but the female one is incredibly, incredibly active. And there's just, loads and loads of posts every day of everyone just sort of experiencing the same thing and offering advice. I go there live as well sometimes to kind of, do recommendations or help or content generally.
Perfect, thank you. No, I think that's absolutely brilliant. It's been such an informative session. Really,
you're very welcome. And yeah, just I hope it did help. I hope you just got a sense of you're not on your own. And it is quite, we talk about pandemic a lot, don't we? But narcissism is a massive pandemic. It's huge. And I do this because I wish I had someone that could have explained narcissism sort of 8 years, 9 years ago. It was just not a known word at all. Some may argue it's overused, but actually, narcissistic abuse is very specific. Divorcing or separating from a narcissist is very difficult. It has to be done in a specific way. It's not your sort of typical divorce. That's why I'm a divorce coach that specializes in divorcing from narcissistic individuals. Because there's a certain strategy that you need to get. You need to sort of learn about identifying leverage and being able to negotiate with them in a proper way, understanding that mediation won't always work, and just getting sort of generally informed. So aside from the sort of the work, working one-on-one or an SOS session with me, I also run workshops a few times. My 2 main workshops are how to negotiate with a narcissist, and another one is narcissism and children. And that's not about children being narcissistic. It's just, again, all about that notion of empowering our children to cope with a narcissistic parent.